Hello everybody and welcome back. It's your boy Sebastian Lee. I have Ralphie, Rado, and Fat Boy with me. They're going to be helping me out in this episode on changing my stock brakes to big boy brakes from Wilwood. So let's get started. Hello everybody and welcome back to Custom Camry, and in this episode I'm going to be changing out my stock brakes to Wilwood brakes. So let's go ahead and discuss all the products that come in this box. So unboxing, we have brake lines, custom brackets for my Camry made by fastbrakes.com, some spacers for the rotors and bolts, and the caliper. She's beautiful, isn't she? 6 pistons. We have the first piece of our rotors. This is a 2-piece rotor kit. Our brakes. There's a second piece of our caliper and first piece rotor. And this is our second piece of the rotor. Alrighty, let's get started. Just a quick overview of all the pieces that we're going to be using for this project. This is how the stock brakes looked. We're going to be removing all these lug nuts to remove the rim and tire so we can get to our calipers and to our rotors. After removing the wheels, now we have a clear view of what we're going to be messing with. We're going to be also identifying the brake line that's attached to the caliper. Make sure we get this rotor off, and also the dust shield might be coming off as well. Alright, the first thing we're going to be removing is the caliper. By doing so, you're going to be removing this nut and this bolt. You're going to need 2 tools for this project because once you start turning the bolt, the nut would turn with it. Unless you're as lucky as this guy. Here's an example of why you should use 2 tools. As he's turning the bolt, the nut is turning with it. To remove these bolts, you're going to need a 14 socket for your wrench and a 17 wrench. As you remove both bolts, you can set the caliper to the side and work on to the next thing. At this point, you can remove the brake separation pins. And then the brake pads. The next step is to remove the stock bracket. There are 2 bolts holding this bracket in place, one on the top and one on the bottom. At this point, you should be able to remove the rotors. If you're having a tough time removing the rotor due to rust, all you have to do is give it a couple of hits. And boom, it'll pop right off. At this point, we're just testing out to see how the rotors will fit and seeing what spaces we have to deal with. We came to the conclusion it's just best to remove the dust shield. After removing all the bolts, all you need to do is pull down on the dust shield and it'll pop right out. And do the same thing on the other side. After removing all the components of our stock brakes, all these bolts will be locked tight to put it together our two-piece rotor set. For most efficiency, place down all washers and then place in all bolts hand tight. After hand tightening all the bolts, we're going to use a wrench to snug all the bolts down. After that, you'll be tightening down every bolt away from each other the same way you would do your lug nuts on your wheels. Here are the custom brackets that will be going onto my Camry to install the Wilwoods. Make sure you utilize all the washers that are being given to you. These washers will help adjust where specifically you would like your calipers to be so it doesn't touch too much on the rim, or it doesn't favor one side of the brake pad over the other. We'll get a closer look at that later on. Make sure all the bolts that you're working with are nice and tight so they don't come off every time you're excessively using your brakes. We will be prepping all our brake lines with Teflon tape. And please be aware that everything that we put on is always going to be hand tightened first, and then we'll use a wrench. Also, we recommend that you use the torque specs with the torque wrench to tighten down any of these bolts. Don't do what we do. We like to think that we're all mechanics and just go by guesstimations. At this point, we will be doing a test fit to determine how many washers or spacers we're going to need in order to make a nice, perfect fit. In order to remove our stock brake lines, we're going to have to remove this clip to gain access to it. We're going to keep the brake line attached to the caliper and focus on removing the brake line from the hard line attached to the car. Now the line is slightly attached to the base due to all the grime and rust. All you need to do is give it a good wiggle and it will pop right out. Now you can also remove the brake line from the second bracket. From here you should be able to remove the stock brake line and then insert the new brake line. Allow the new brake line to flow with brake fluid and then attach it to the caliper. While tightening the hard line and the aftermarket line together, we realized that the bolt on the hard line was stripped, so we used a vice grip to keep it together. At this point, we're going to be installing our rotor, and that silver ring that's in the middle is that spacer that we discussed earlier in the video. It helps keep the whole rotor in place without wiggling. We'll be installing our caliper to the bracket and our brake pads into the caliper. This is where I was discussing earlier about the washers being perfectly placed so we can have the caliper centered to the rotor. Be sure to install our center pin so that the brakes don't come out while we're braking. At this point, since everything's installed, we'll be bleeding out all the lines. There's a total of 4 lines at each caliper. We'll do the bottom section first, and then we'll work our way up to the top section since air goes up. After bleeding out all the lines, this is our final result. I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, and if you want to stay tuned for any more future episodes, please subscribe and I'll keep you posted on more. And here are the Wilwoods with my wheels. If you would like to have a custom bracket built for your car so you can install Wilwoods yourself, just go to fastbrakes.com. I will be leaving a link in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.